What in the 20s is going
in the
on?
20s?
Think about
Yes, the 20s, baby.
Plenty. What in the 20s is going here for my 20s, baby? This is the 20s.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Zamam Kize, and this is What's in the 20s, a podcast where you listen to me grow through it, baby. On this episode, we're going to be speaking about why you should introspect. So what is introspection, right? It's essentially a deep reflection inwards, right? It's being able to reflect on a situation that you were a part of, reflect on who you are, reflect on your behaviors, reflect on the role that you play, just basically your presence in a space, in an interaction, in a situation, in a scenario, and all of that kind of stuff. That's what introspection is. It's like a really deeper gaining and understanding of self during certain circumstances in your life and periods and seasons and all of that, which is so essential. Please and thank you. It's so essential. It's so important. I think it's invaluable, if I'm being quite honest, being able to look at yourself, because that's the thing that a lot of people avoid doing. That's a lot of the things that we feel distant from doing and stuff like that. It's not easy. It's so not easy to gain self-awareness. It's not easy to really hold yourself accountable to certain things. It's not easy to acknowledge the role that you may play in something not working out, in something breaking apart, falling apart, all of that kind of stuff. But we're going to be getting into it. I think introspection is when you're able to first and foremost, you're able to process something in a deeper and more meaningful way, because sometimes we just let things pass by us and we're not even recognizing the effects that it has on us, the way that it makes us affect other people because of what has happened and all the rest. And I think that when you're able to introspect, you're processing the events, you're processing your feelings about the events, you're processing your thoughts and your mindset about the events and stuff like that. And then you're also processing the effects it has on you. You're also processing what it means to you, if it means anything at all. I think that when we're able to process, we're able to see things through, rather than just either pushing it aside, pushing it under the rug, ignoring it, pretending it didn't happen, avoiding it, and all of that kind of stuff. I think, processing is an incredible way of really getting a full picture of something. And then beyond processing is a deep sense of understanding with yourself, understanding why you feel. So not even just the fact that you feel this way because of this, but why do I feel this way? Why has it affected me in this way? Why has the situation even happened to begin with and stuff like that? I think when you have a deeper understanding with self, it's such a deep place to go, because you will start to track patterns. You'll start to track how far back this goes for you and the feelings that it brings up for you. And you know what I'm saying? And that understanding as to why it's even bringing that up for you and stuff like that. And sometimes it'll be something you didn't even expect. Sometimes it could be something that honestly felt like it played like no significant role in your life and stuff. And now you're seeing remnants of that happening today in where you are and stuff like that. I think that it's introspection allows us to breathe the space for accountability. When we're able to now really understand, process, see things and stuff like that, we can hold ourselves accountable for what's going on. We can't hold ourselves accountable for something we don't understand. We can't hold ourselves accountable for something we don't even really cannot conceive, that we're just kind of like, I don't really, I haven't really thought about it. I haven't, what I'm saying? It's very difficult for you to actually take accountability for the role that you play in something if you're not even engaging with the fact that you even did. You're not even acknowledging the role that you played in something and stuff like that. And so I think it's important that we're able to hold ourselves accountable for things and stuff, because sometimes we like to act like it's everybody else's fault. We like to act like it's everything else outside of us. It's everything else but us. You know what I'm saying? It's everything but us and stuff. But I think when we're able to hold ourselves accountable, we're able to see things, from a different perspective, and all of that kind of stuff, which is great. I think the important thing about introspection is being able to develop honesty and transparency with yourself. A lot of people are not honest with themselves. And it's hard to do that. Again, I'll say that because it's hard to accept where we may fall short. It's hard to accept why certain things didn't work out. It's hard to accept that certain things really just isn't in the cards for us, etc., etc. And I think that when we introspect and all of that kind of stuff, we begin to peel off the lies. You know how many lies we tell ourselves, man? And so often we even start believing them. We get so delusional to the point where it feels like our reality in a very negative way. And I think that when we are introspecting with ourselves, we are engaging with an honest conversation with ourselves about who we are and how we affect people and how other people affect us. You know, we lie about the fact that this situation hurts us, that this person has hurt us and all the rest because we don't want to give somebody that power and etc., etc. We lie about the fact that we think we are good people, reliable people and this and that. But when we look at our track record, we let people down, we disappoint people, etc., etc. You know, there's things that we have to be honest with ourselves. And yes, you might have this perception of yourself, but what do the facts say? You know, what is your track record saying? What is other people's assessment of you saying about who you are? And I think it's sometimes really important to look at that because there can be a disconnect. Have you ever met someone who genuinely there's a disconnect between how they see themselves and how they operate in the world? You know, and it's they really believe they are a certain way. They've truly convinced themselves that this is who they are. But you don't believe them for that. You know, you don't perceive them for that and stuff like that. And I think that's what's also so important to speak to people you care about in terms of understanding, you know, are my actions in accordance with who I believe it is that I say I am? Are they receiving me in the way that I assumed or always just believed I was and all of that kind of stuff? And that's what I'm saying. This is where we speak about the topic of self-awareness, right? If you don't have that self-awareness, you're never going to, there's always going to be a disconnect. There's always going to be a disconnect between what's going on in your brain and how you're executing in reality. And that's why we need to introspect, because when you lack self-awareness, you make people uncomfortable. Everybody is uncomfortable around people who are not self-aware, because it's so difficult reasoning with them. It's so difficult talking and connecting with them, relating with them and all of that kind of stuff, because they can't see what you're saying. They can't grasp. And it's so like you will always lose in a fight with them and a battle with them because they're not doing the work to introspect what it is that you're saying or claiming and all of that kind of stuff. I think self-awareness is your ability to, I mentioned earlier about patterns, right? It's your ability to recognize when patterns show up in your life, triggers, you know, what is triggering me right now. To be able to pinpoint what that is, why it is, where it's coming from, that is self-awareness. And that's so profound. Like to be able to call out something for what it is, you know, instead of just being triggered and not understanding what's going on and then falling apart and all of that kind of stuff, but being able to have the foresight to see it coming and then avoiding it, and you know, beforehand and stuff, because you know the pattern, you know the cycle, you know what happens when you're in these spaces, you know what happens when you interact with certain people, you know what happens when you're under this much pressure and stress and this and that and this work environment and blah, 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 blah. Like, you know, because it's consistently shown the same feelings, which brought about the same thoughts, which brought about the same behaviors. Sorry, the same thoughts which brought about the same feelings, which brought about the same behaviors. And the problem with not tracking your patterns and stuff is that you will always remain a person that is reactive in life. You're constantly reacting at anything and everything because you don't take the time to understand where these triggers are coming from and how to cope, you know, in certain scenarios and situations and all of that kind of stuff. You do not want to be someone who's reactive and explosive all the time. You want to learn how to self-regulate. You want to learn how to emotionally regulate, how to be a human being amongst other human beings instead of constantly feeling like life is happening to you and not for you. You're able to recognize your habits, what your bad habits are when you introspect. Sometimes we have things like, I've opened up about the fact that I don't even notice when I roll my eyes because it's been a habit of mine since I was a child. Like if I hear something I don't like, I'll just yes and or whatever, and the more I introspect and stuff, and the more I've started hearing people, bring that up. And my mom would tell me this since I was a child, but I just thought, oh, she's just being a mom, whatever, But now I'm picking up in my friends or somebody says it to me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a bad habit. I need to stop rolling my eyes in front of people. Sometimes you think it's an internal dialogue. You think it's happening in your head. Nobody else can hear it. Nobody else can see what you're doing, but people can see. People are aware of your actions, of your habits, and they see that you constantly do that. Another thing, this might feel so, small, but like when I write or when I concentrate, I stick my tongue out. And I was told that since I was a child. Like people always used to say, like, Summer, put your tongue back in, put your tongue back. Like, when I'm just like writing, like my tongue will just I don't know how it happens. I don't even recognize when it's happening. Still to this day, like even when I'm like filling in my eyebrows and stuff, I'll notice after some time my tongue has been sticking out the entire. Like that's how I focus. That's how I really have like my 100% concentration on what I'm doing. And it's not a great habit of mine. It's not a habit I'm proud of. Like I don't want to be sticking my tongue out every single time I'm like concentrating on something. But it's what I'm saying. And until I started introspecting and being more self-aware and noticing that, the more I could like quickly, reset and close my mouth and all of that kind of stuff, instead of just being like, this is the way I am, live with it, this is, just accept it. People just said, this is just who I am, and they don't want to improve. They don't want to work on these little small things and stuff like that. Like, it's quite annoying being around people who don't want to progress and stuff like that. So yeah, it's just, whether it's a small little habit like that or big, terrible habits that you have, you need to be able to have the self-awareness to identify what those are and make the active effort to change that. I think that we're able to notice our energy. So remember what I was saying, that sometimes we feel like our bad attitudes are happening internally, that nobody else can see it. That's a lie. Everybody can pick up on your energy. We can pick up when you're not in the space. We can pick up when you're irritated. We can pick up when you're annoyed. We can pick up when you're down, upset, angry, and all of that, when you're jealous, right? We can pick up when you're envious and all that kind of stuff. And do you think, no, nobody knows, like, I'm just showing up as my normal self. Your energy says that. And when you're not introspecting, you're going to constantly keep thinking that you're showing up as a version of yourself in your head, but everybody is aware. Everybody knows. And then you're wondering, why are people repelling against you, repelling away from you? Why are people distancing themselves from you? Why are people not engaging with you the way that you're used to them engaging with you and stuff? It's because of your energy. You're not giving off an inviting, warm, loving and kind energy. Instead, it's the opposite. My mom would always say, be a generous giver. Like, don't just give me something just because you want to, just because I asked you to or whatever it is, and you just like throw it and stuff like that. Sometimes when you're so irritated, you just throw the thing somebody's asking for. Don't throw it. Give it to them nicely. Be happy, be like, or else no, people don't want the thing you're not happy to give. You know what I'm saying? And like, yeah, I think if you're just a cheerful giver, if you're just joyful about it and all of that kind of stuff, you're creating a nice, safe environment, but if not, and you're thinking no one is picking up on it, I got news for you. They are. And that's what I mean about self-awareness. If we don't have self-awareness, we won't recognize our flaws, our shortcomings, our mistakes, because you can't see it, you can't conceive it, you don't believe it. And so you don't recognize it as truth. You don't think that you are someone who is flawed. You don't think that you are someone who has made a mistake in this particular regard, because you don't want to do the introspection to understand why someone could have received that differently, why somebody is hurt by your actions and all the rest. Because for you, it's more important to be right or to be defensive and protect yourself than to really have empathy and compassion and understand where somebody is coming from. So the problem with people who do not introspect and lack self-awareness is that they are often inconsiderate. As I'm saying, because you don't want to see where I'm coming from and why I'm telling you what you did hurt me, you can't even consider it. You can't even consider it as a choice, as a factor, as a this and that, because it's just like you don't have the self-awareness to see me. And people can only meet you as far as they met themselves. And if they haven't met themselves so intimately and deeply, they're never going to, sorry, I could write a whole thing about this. But anyways, they're never going to meet you with the depth and the range that you desire. If people lack the honesty and the transparency to see themselves, and they lack just the comprehension to fully understand themselves, you are not going to get that from them. You're not going to get someone who sees you. You're not going to get someone who can forgive you in really difficult circumstances, And it's often these people, right, who lack self-awareness, who struggle with forgiveness because they cannot, in their minds, they would never do that. Or, you know what I'm saying? They're like, I would never be in that position to begin with, so why would I forgive you? But that's the thing. It's like, we lose a lot of our humanity and stuff because we're not introspecting all the ways that we've caused harm, that we cause hurt and pain and suffering and disappointment and all of that kind of stuff. And so we make ourselves superior and self-righteous. And it's so, so, so difficult begging to be considered and seen by someone who will not see themselves, who will not be honest with themselves. And it's so important to recognize that. It's so important for you to identify that, if someone is still a long journey away from accepting themselves, and from being honest with themselves and stuff. I think that you are self-serving when you do not introspect because you're constantly thinking about how the situation serves you. You're constantly thinking about how the situation favors you. And that's why you become inconsiderate. Because if it's not for your gain or for your benefit, you don't see why you need to go down the road of looking inwards, and all of that kind of stuff. And it's so harmful. It's so dangerous to keep moving down that path because you have a blind side, your peripheral is blocked because you're just seeing things in black and white and you're not seeing all the gray matter or the gray area that a lot of the situation could exist in. I think that you don't see your faults. You actually have an inability to recognize them and reconcile. I think, have you noticed when someone finds it so difficult to apologize, so difficult to make peace and all of that kind of stuff, you struggle with those values and stuff like that because you don't have the self-awareness, man. And that really is what it is. It's like, you feel like, oh, why should I apologize? Or why should I this? Why? You're always so defensive. You're always so guarded. You're always so, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's like a true sign of someone who isn't, that self-aware is like your walls are always up because you can't give yourself that grace. And so how can you extend that, And so it just always feels like everything is an attack, etc., etc. I think that you feel like the world is always against you. You feel like everything is just... things suck because this person is coming at me, or I can't get this because this person was already going to choose somebody else, and this, and they were never going to want me, and it's never my chance, it's never my time, it's never my moment, it's never my opportunity. Everything is just against you, instead of you wondering, have I built good relationships with people? Have I been a good energy in the space, in the work environment that they would want to appoint me, that they would want to use me in certain spaces and stuff? Have I been going the extra mile? Have I been putting in more than what they ask of me, putting in more work than what is expected of me and stuff like that? Have I really been showing myself as someone deserving of the things that I want? But then we think that no, everything else is the problem and stuff, because we don't want to do the work to introspect. And the problem with that too is that there's very little room for growth, for change, when we don't introspect. And so because we can't hold ourselves accountable, because we can't see where we went wrong, because we can't understand why everybody has a problem with me, and all of that kind of stuff, we can't grow, we can't rectify situations, we can't move past situations and all of that kind of stuff. As I used the word earlier, reconcile. And so because things like that can't happen, we can't grow from that point. Because you don't recognize your flaws and all of that kind of stuff, you can't change it and move forward. You just maintain it throughout your life, which is an issue. You have to want to grow. You have to want self-expansion and development and all the rest. I think that people who struggle with introspection often have a low EQ, low emotional intelligence. And that is not nice. It's not nice to engage with somebody who cannot emotionally regulate themselves, somebody who will not meet you where you need to be met emotionally, somebody who is reactive, responsive all the time and all the rest, someone who is just not able to have the empathy and consideration needed to build relationships, to foster and grow relationships. Someone who lacks EQ is often immature, right? And that immaturity is it's not nice to constantly deal with, because you're constantly going to keep fighting. You're going to keep fighting yourself, finding yourself in a battle. And what did I say earlier? That when you don't introspect, you're often self-serving. And so the battle is, things will only be okay if they are okay. Things will only be fine if they found peace with the situation. And they will always make you feel bad for it, mind you. If they have to forgive you for something, they're always going to make you feel like, mind you, I forgave you for this thing. You know what I'm saying? Like you owe them something, you know? Like they went out of their way to do something for you. And that's not a nice feeling, you know? That's not emotional maturity, making someone pay for the rest of their lives. So the fact that you forgave them for something, that's not how this works. Forgiveness is a decision that you make, that you choose to give to someone. Someone can't deserve or earn forgiveness with you. And so when you make that choice to forgive, you're essentially saying, let's put this to bed. Let's move forward. Let's let it go. But I think people who struggle with emotional intelligence will constantly hold that against you. And what that tells me is that you're holding resentment. You know, you hold resentment towards me, towards the situation, because I'm now always going to be walking on eggshells, wondering if this is going to be the thing that like tips you off and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that's another thing to look out for. So how do we introspect? Spend some time alone, right? Away from distractions, away from just outside voices and all of that kind of stuff, where you're able to just hear your own voice. How do you feel about a situation? You know, what are your thoughts on it? What is your perspective on it? And all of that kind of stuff. When you're able to just sit with yourself, whether it's journaling, you know, making a voice recording and stuff like that, just allowing yourself to stream out like a stream of consciousness, essentially, when you're just kind of just pouring it out into something, you're going to be able to find out what's really going on beneath, you know, all the surface level talking and thinking and all of that kind of stuff. I think getting perspective. So whether it's consulting with your soundboard, right, your people who are your close circle and stuff like that, explaining the situation to them and seeing their perspective on the situation, that's a great way to introspect, because maybe the way you're seeing it, you need somebody else to guide you on the way the situation may look, you know, and all of that kind of stuff, which is important, because if you're only relying on your own perspective, your own understanding and all the rest, I think that you're going to struggle having range and understanding. And I think we have to humble ourselves, right? Because sometimes it's not just us in the situation, there are other people involved too. So we need to see how other people could be affected by it and stuff. And that's why getting perspective is so important. Put yourself in the shoes of somebody else, you know, and that's what I mean again about compassion and empathy. We can't introspect if it's just me, right? Looking inwards is, again, as I said, it's how you were in the space, how the space affected you, who you were affected other people, you know? And so if we're affecting other people, we need to be able to see in their shoes why they would be affected that way and how and all of that kind of stuff, which is important to do when you're able to gauge just when we're trying to have self-awareness, because that awareness is us being able to recognize when we do these actions, we're affecting people in this way. When we speak like this, when we roll our eyes, when we raise our voice and all that kind of stuff, when we make certain gestures, this is the response I'm getting back. This is the feedback I'm getting. So what information am I getting from all of this? What is that telling me? And look outside in. You know, sometimes we're too in the mix of it. We're too involved. And we need to just kind of see it from outside in terms of objectively what is going on here. You know, and I think these are like really helpful tools in terms of introspecting. It's like it's taking the time to really grasp something, and instead of relying solely on our own understanding, we give ourselves permission to think, you know, and receive the information from other people. And that is emotional maturity, right? Is to not just think about the way that you're hurt or affected by something, but like, being able to apologize for somebody else's feelings and stuff like that, being able to just show kindness, you know, just show care, love and stuff. Those are things that no one will, like, we can't take those things for granted, you know, and it's so special. It's so lovely being mates with people who are like this, who are calm. I think it'll give you a lot of calm when you are self-aware, because you're more reassured of who you are and yourself. And I think that people who don't do this are often insecure because they have no understanding of who they are. And so that's why they're always guarded and defensive and stuff like that. It's a lot of their insecurities at play. But I think when you're more understanding, when you develop a deeper relationship with yourself, it's a lot easier for you to just be, to just maintain calm in chaos, you know, which is very attractive and very, very, very cool. And something that I just want us to be better at in terms of introspecting. That's what I want to speak about today. As always, I'm sending my love. Goodbye.
What in the 20s is going
in the 20s
here?
The 20s, baby.
What in the 20s is going here for my 20s, baby? This is the 20s.